Good evening, friends. Today we have Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, Senior Fellow at Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. Abhijit specializes in defense economics and has been a visiting fellow at Sandia National Laboratories and the Stimson Center and regularly publishes on defense and foreign policy. Welcome to our show, Abhijit.
Thank you, Meenaji. Pleasure as always.
And viewers, if you have any questions for Abhijit, please do ask him towards the end of this session. Thank you. Abhijit, I'll just speak about what happened, transpired yesterday, and then we can move on to the, session. Yesterday, after people witnessed the Republic Day celebrations, a day that filled us with pride for our forces and the tremendous sacrifices made by them for our country and for us, we witnessed mayhem on the streets of Delhi thanks to the so-called farmers' agitation, which became a Khalistani movement. The protesting farmers on January 26 entered the national capital from three routes, from the Singhu border, the Tikri border, and the Ghazipur border. Delhi police gave their nod for a peaceful protest. However, despite Sanyukt Kisan Morcha's assurance and Delhi police's conditions for the tractor march, violence broke out as the goons entered Delhi. The protesting goons were well armed with swords and steel rods. They went amok as their tractors broke the barricades and cemented barriers at Delhi's Mukarba Chowk, prompting Delhi police to use tear shells against them. The situation quickly moved to a point where the police were outnumbered and farmers overran Delhi, with a group of them breaching Red Fort's ramparts and planting their flag atop its podium. One of the protesters breached the Red Fort and unfurled a saffron flag and a yellow flag bearing the holy Sikh symbol atop the dome of the fort. Rajnath Singh of India Today, who is a great one to spin fake stories, reported that a protester died, with some groups alleging that he died because of a bullet fired by police forces. However, Delhi police released CCTV footage later, which showed that the protester died after a tractor upturned as it ran over the barricades. Delhi police said that over 300 police personnel were injured. So that was one more fake news from Rajdeep Sardesai, not forgetting the fact that NDTV went on another tangent, weaving more fake stories. The Delhi police had allowed the tractor rally to take place from noon to 5 p.m. However, when the protesters forcefully tried to enter the capital, Delhi police attempted to persuade the farmers to begin the rally as per plan, after the conclusion of the Republic Day parade, which led to clashes. Farmers were seen riding bikes, brandishing swords, sticks, and vandalizing a bus. They drove tractors at full speed towards the police personnel who were blocking them. Most parties condemned the violence, but questioned the center on the failure of law and order in Delhi. Yogendra Yadav, Rakesh Tikre, and other so-called farmer leaders were booked for Delhi riot, while 200 were arrested today. Meanwhile, a sit has been formed to probe the violence on January 26. Earlier in the day, Culture and Tourism Minister Prahlad Patel inspected Red Fort with officers of the Culture Ministry and Archaeological Survey and said, report is being made at the earliest and it will be handed over to MHA and FIR to be registered immediately. Things will be further clarified after reports come. They were all well stacked with alcohol, snacks, and other food items. These protesters were drunk and violent. They had lathis with flags. They beat up the police officers. They were chanting Khalistan Zindabad and brandishing swords on horses and tractors. They praised Bhindranwala, and their intention was to pull down the Indian flag at Red Fort, which they did. They even announced a reward of $350,000 for those who wave the Khalistani flag. SFJ asked farmers to lay siege on Indian Parliament on February 1st. If you remember, Abhijit, in 1984, Congressies butchered thousands of Sikhs in Delhi. Then RSS saved several Sikhs from the rampaging mob. Now a section of the same Sikhs have joined hands with Congressies and have humiliated our nation in the same capital. Abhijit, it's very clear that these are our real enemies and their attempt is to attack our nationalistic principles. They want to break the unity of India. They want to tear apart India because India's growth frightens them. India needs to be united to fight this kind of anarchy and abuse of democracy. It's also very reminiscent of what happened at Capitol Hill. Abhijit, you've been watching this very closely. Could you tell us what are your thoughts on this?
Several thoughts. The first thing is we shouldn't conflate Khalistanis with Sikhs. Remember, Sikhs still provide a huge part of your army, and they're very loyal to the state of India. Khalistanis are a significant chunk of Punjab, of Sikhs, but they don't represent all Sikhs. Right. The second thing is we also need to make a distinction between the Nishan Sahib, which was the triangular flag that was raised on the flagpole at Red Fort, and the Khalistan flag, which in different variations has the Sikh symbol with a lion or the Sikh symbol with the words Khalistan on it. Okay. Keeping that in mind, remember, Khalistanis have been trying to infiltrate several movements over the years because they've lost any kind of political traction on the ground. They initially tried to backpedal on the AAP, and then the AAP flopped quite miserably. Then they tried to backpedal now on latch on to the farmer movement. And clearly the farmer movement isn't going anywhere because it's only about 30,000 farmers protesting at any given point of time. And basically nobody else from any other state is joining in any great number or whatever, except say Haryana, and that has more to do with the anger over Manohar Lal Khattar being a Punjabi banya imposed on a state that has only known Jat chief ministers. So again, very, very different reasons for them coming together. Now, there have been two issues that happened on Republic Day. One is a crime of commission. The other is a crime of omission. Now, in India, unfortunately, crimes of omission aren't considered crimes. They are considered errors of omission. Because had they been considered crimes of omission, then your entire bureaucracy, every single IAS officer, IPS officer, IAS officer, IFS officer would all be facing inquiries and been sacked in the tens of thousands. So, it's like that joke that comes in Yes, Prime Minister, where Sir Humphrey Appleby turns to... I forget what the other guy's name is, and said, what a dangerous principle for a government servant to be sacked for incompetence. If that were the case, then we'd lose hundreds, maybe even thousands of them. So, that is why we don't make errors of omission crimes of omission. Now, there was crimes of commission out here, which was on part of all, okay, the farm leaders. And that was that they basically called for a rally into Delhi, and they didn't discourage the violence while it was going on. Therefore, they bear something called command responsibility, which comes from the Nuremberg trials, where it was acknowledged that you don't have to be directly involved, but if it was your troops that went and did certain things, you are still guilty of it unless you proved that you tried very hard to stop it while it was in its commission. Okay, number one. Number two, there is the error of omission on the farm leaders' part, which is that they knew. Today we are seeing people distance themselves from the movement. They could have distanced themselves before. They knew that there were people out there with Bindranwale posters. They knew people out there were carrying Khalistani posters. They knew all kinds of nefarious elements were joining their this thing. Deep Sidhu, for example. Why did they never distance themselves from Deep Sidhu till today? Right? And mind you, Deep Sidhu initially they hailed. Then when he gave that very idiotic interview to Barkha Dutt, they started calling Barkha Dutt an RSS agent. And today, Deep Sidhu has become an RSS agent. So it's particularly amazing when Barkha Dutt gets called an RSS agent. And Deep Sidhu also becomes an RSS agent. That is one other thing. The third error of omission on part. So we've established crimes of commission, one error of omission, and the second error of omission was that it was their responsibility to ensure that everybody coming on the march knew the route, that they coordinate with the police to ensure that the route was followed. And this is where we come to the fourth thing on the farmer's side, which is a crime of commission. You have several of the farm leaders, including non-farmer Yogendra Yadav now, on record saying that we are going to break the barriers. I have actually, I think it's my latest tweet where I've tweeted out the video of Yogendra Yadav saying, uh, personally, till a few hours back, I did not believe there was any grounds to arrest Yogendra Yadav or anybody like that, because there was absolutely no incitement. There was no direct incitement to break the law. But that video shows when he says we are going to go ahead and break police barriers, that there has been clear planning and there is intent. Okay, they made that intent clear. As far back as the 7th of January, Live Mint was reporting, Live Mint the paper was reporting, अगर 2-3 हमारे लोग मरे तो भी क्या हुआ, अगर हमारा खून बहा तो भी क्या, हम जाके दिल्ली को जलाएंगे. Okay, again I've tweeted out the relevant paragraphs from the 7th of January piece by Live Mint. This is the criminal responsibility and the failure on part of the farm leaders. Now let's come to the government, because the government looks particularly bad in this. Okay, what the government did was they knew all along, there were intelligence inputs throughout, that this is going to get violent. This is not going to go well. It is going to keep getting worse. They did nothing. They thought they were playing fantastic politics in letting these people come and do their own little violent tamasha. I suspect the government was actually expecting it to get violent, and they allowed it so that, they could delegitimize the movement. Now, see, the point is we pay taxes to protect us. We don't pay taxes for them to play their politics. And I don't think they seem to get that. For them, everything seems to be some kind of a attempt at extending their electoral victories, not for protecting us from anything. So the most shameful part of yesterday was, and mind you, this is where I admire Yogendra Yadav. He's admitted responsibility, he has apologized, and he has said he's ashamed. Not one person from the government has come out and apologized to the people for what happened. We were let down, and look at the danger of all of this. These people have come and they have demolished, they've destroyed one or two of the tableaus that took part. They damaged the Ram Mandir tableau. They damaged the Modera Sun Temple, I think, or one of the other tableaus as well that took part. They were literally, they'd come up to ITO, Tilak Marg, where ITO is, it's right up to India Gate. It was literally within visual distance of India Gate that they came. They were literally within 200-300 meters of the Supreme Court of India. And this is how lax the police arrangement was. So there has also been a command failure on part of the government, a very serious command failure on part of the government, grave miscalculation on part of the government, compound incompetence on part of the government, and they should be ashamed of themselves, but then they have always proven themselves to be utterly shameless. There's no shaming the shameless. It has a lot to do with their upbringing, I guess. There's nothing you can do to compensate for a rotten upbringing, but that is what it is.
And then, also, Abhijit, see, you talk about media. See, for example, I was just looking at all the media reports. Everything is in favor of these people who they call farmers, but they're not farmers. So, see, if you just open Google News, you'll see that any news media is only talking about, see, how it is a very, valid sort of agitation, similar to, that of Capitol Hill.
So that has to do with the way we classify farmers. Technically, if you look at it, because of Robert Vadra's land holdings, he is a farmer. As per the legal definition of farmer, Robert Vadra is a farmer. So, the thing is, we ourselves, our legal classification of farmer and farmland and all of that is such that you can actually genuinely claim to be a farmer. What do you do? I mean, who are we to sit? If that is the legal definition of farmer, then almost everybody out there protesting is a farmer or a relative of a farmer. There's nothing we can do about that. That I do not have issues over. To Rajdeep's credit, he did admit that he passed off a piece of fake news. And he apologized, he withdrew, and he put up a clarificatory statement, semi-clarificatory statement. My worry really is, had it not been for, and if you remember, Meena, on several platforms I've said this, that the biggest lacuna in our security management in Kashmir has been the lack of video cameras to bust the narrative ki, oh, mera bacha jisko pellet gun laga, he was just shopping for shalgam, or he was shopping for mutton. He was innocently standing by the roadside and they shot him point blank in the face with pellet guns. This is complete rubbish. And Rajdeep proved it better than anybody else of why all these Kashmiri he said, she said stories are complete and utter hogwash. And this is the value of having TV cameras. Okay. It is particularly important in India because every time a public security situation goes south, we end up making the local captain or the police chief in that area or the constable in that area the bakra, and the real people who are responsible for the screw up, they get away scot-free. And this is why they never put up cameras. It's a deliberate ploy on part of the higher management, higher police management, higher military management, not to put up cameras, so that the senior command never have to take responsibility. It's all the junior troops who actually do the fighting that are made bakras and sacrificed. Plus, remember, it also plays into the terrorist narrative.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what would have happened in the case of this guy who got killed had it not been for that video of that tractor capsizing?
Yeah.
Right. So this is, look, every mistake is a learning experience. And I'd say the takeaway from here, learning experiences, I've given up on trying to teach this government anything because, they're donkeys. No matter how much, I mean, I know donkeys you can train. These people are worse than donkeys. They're mules. They're a genetic dead end. When you cross a horse with a donkey, it becomes a mule. It's a genetic dead end because mules, even if they copulate with each other, they can't reproduce. So it's a bit like that. No matter what you try to teach a mule, it will never learn, unlike donkeys who learn. So what's happened here is that this government, you can't teach it anything. It knows everything. वो अंतर्यामी है, त्रिलोकदर्शी हैं, सब कुछ हैं, निर्माता हैं, सब कुछ राम लक्ष्मण सीता एक में हैं, ब्रह्मा विष्णु Shiva sab ek mein hai. They think they know it all. Congratulations to them. I'm not going to give them any advice. The only learning experience in this is for our security forces and for our security managers. Please start installing those cameras in Kashmir and in terrorism areas, because it is a very, very important way of defraying the kind of human rights abuse allegations that come against us every now and then.
Yeah. Amrita Shirali is asking, don't they care for the safety of the poor policemen, the government, I mean?
No, they're only worried about winning elections, boss. तुम मरो, policemen मरे. अगर 100 भी policemen मरे होते ना, they wouldn't have given a damn. As long as they could win an election, they don't give a damn. And yes, thank you. Somebody is saying this. I predicted this a month back. I did. I predicted this was going to happen in December, almost a month back. Just like I predicted Shaheen Bagh was going to blow up into violence, and people didn't listen. Now, and I'm not even particularly insightful in predicting this. It was normal. It's just a natural extrapolation, because one form of criminality, you may think it is simple. You may think it is simple that, blocking, obstructing a road is a very minor form of criminality. No. Criminality is fungible. Once you go in for one form of criminality, you go in for all forms of criminality. A drug dealer who deals in weed is inoffensive. If he gets the opportunity to start dealing in heroin, he will automatically start dealing in heroin. Yeah. Okay, so from road blockage to burning down buses, it's a very, very short fuse that separates them. So you allowed these people to block roads with their tractors. You allowed these people to uproot telephone poles with impunity. What did you think was going to happen? An insurrection that has no consequences is called a rehearsal. A rehearsal for something bigger and worse. That is what Seelampur was. Seelampur became Shaheen Bagh, and Shaheen Bagh was a rehearsal for something much bigger, which became the Delhi riots. This was the same thing. The blockage of roads was a rehearsal for the uprooting of telephone poles, which was a rehearsal for what happened in Delhi yesterday. Yeah. But you know what? मैं कौन हूँ यार? मैं बस गंजा मोटा सा एक इडियट हूं, मैं क्या त्रिलोकदर्शी अंतर्यामी नहीं हूं ना, हमारे भगवान जैसे कैबिनेट की तरह। उधर तो सब लक्ष्मी शिवा त्रिलोकदर्शी अंतर्यामी बैठे हैं सब लोग, उन्हीं को करनी, तो वो तो डेली, people don't understand how profound our cabinet is. We think they're only dealing with Delhi situation. They're actually dealing with cosmic interstellar forces. Mars में क्या होगा, सैटर्न का गैस बैलेंस क्या होगा, सैटर्न के आई में क्या चल रहा है, सैटर्न के रिंग में क्या चल रहा है, ये सब वो देख रहे हैं। वो 10 डायमेंशनल चेस खेल रहे हैं बॉस। आप सब ये लोग, आप छोटे मोटे लोग हो, हम छोटे मोटे लोग हो, हम ये सब समझते नहीं है।
Okay. Sayak Roy Chaudhary is asking, Abhijit, do you think the White House fiasco somehow inspired this?
No, it didn't. This preparation was going on long before that.
Yeah.
If you remember, I told you something like this was going to happen in December, well before the White House. It wasn't the White House; it was the Capitol thing happened. No, and even in that, if you can see now, you look at the videos of what Rudy Giuliani said and what Trump said. There doesn't seem to be any kind of incitement out there. You tell me, if there was a video with Trump or Rudy inciting the violence, the liberal media wouldn't have gone apeshit over it. They would have been playing it on non-stop loop for the last 30 days running. They didn't. There's clearly nothing. Here there is. There is news reports. There is all kinds of reports about it. And it was very, very clear that this was going to happen.
Ridiman is asking, were there some IB inputs also that this tractor rally will turn violent and the government ignored them?
Yes, there was. And today, if you notice, there's a WhatsApp. I'm not going to get into the details of it. But last night, there was a WhatsApp, long WhatsApp message, very detailed WhatsApp message, clearly from some kind of an insider, doing the rounds, blaming one faction of the government. And this morning, there is a clearly leaked, stage-managed piece in the Indian Express by the offended party that is now blaming the other side of government. So what you have seen this morning is a civil war within the government happening, where two factions going at each other's throats, two factions trying to sort of outmaneuver each other. And again, they don't give a damn what happens to the country. They're more interested in their power jockeying within the cabinet.
Tanmay is asking, but don't you think that the violence has put the government on moral high ground against the protesters?
No, you'll never have the moral high ground as long as the liberals are against you. You try arresting the protesters now, you see, तुम्हारे 15 सेकंड के लिए तुम्हारा moral high ground नहीं बचेगा. Why are you so concerned about the moral high ground, boss? You tell me this. Moral high ground is what? Moral high ground is not allowing 20,000 delinquents to hijack the policy of 1.3 billion people. Okay. Right now, the only thing I'm seeing is impotence. Impotence has never been a moral high ground.
Anti-nationals only want proofs. They are always against forces, the system.
They only want proof that supports their thing. जो भी उनके version को support करता है is proof. Anything that disrupts their version is bigotry.
Mahesh is saying that the policemen were looking so helpless with those sticks in hand. I don't know how the intelligence were so naive. They were posturing and...
Intelligence was not naive. We know this from several sources that the intelligence warned the government. It was purely a governmental decision to do nothing. Okay, mind you, you have 10,000 troops in Delhi for the and additional forces deployed in Delhi for the Republic Day parade. Okay, remember, even when the Delhi riots were there was an additional police deployment in Delhi for Trump's visit. And that never seems to deter them. Okay, so clearly these people know what they're doing. And clearly the government does not know what it is doing. It doesn't even know how to use the troops. See, in Gujarat, when the Godhra riots happened, there's a very strong case that the government did not have troops at that point of time. They asked Madhya Pradesh for Rajasthan for troops. They asked Maharashtra for troops, and these were all Congress ruled states. And all those states said, "Sorry, boss, हमारे पास troops नहीं है तुम्हारे को भेजने के लिए." Here, what was the laxity of troops? What was the paucity of troops? तुम्हारे पास troops नहीं थे. What were all those boys we saw marching on Republic Day parade? What were they doing? चना भटूरा खाने आए थे क्या दिल्ली?
Pravar Chaturvedi says, will this act by Khalistanis boost the morale of Islamists and they'll restart Shaheen Bagh and TCAA with greater enthusiasm and more violence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was confirmed when, please go back and see my tweets from last year, well, end 2019, when I said the fact that these people aren't cracking down on Shaheen Bagh, you are just incentivizing more of these kind of Occupy Wall Street ki tarah, Occupy Street kind of protests. Okay. The only reason Shaheen Bagh was broken up was because of COVID. COVID broke up Shaheen Bagh. The Supreme Court did not break up Shaheen Bagh. They passed the judgment जब सब ठेका बंद हो चुका था. Then Supreme Court passes a judgment after 3 months. ये है तुम्हारी Supreme Court की औकात. ठीक है?
So Arvind Raj, yeah.
Then
Continue,
now,
please.
again, what did you do? You abdicated power. The Supreme Court is challenging a legally passed piece of legislation that has not violated either the spirit of the Constitution or the laid down process of the Constitution. And the government doesn't seem to get it. So this is, boss, you are now looking at the next 4 years till the 2024 elections. You are looking at an unending stream of anarchy. I think the residents of Delhi बहुत बुरी तरह से भुगतने वाले हैं, because every 2 months you're going to have some kind of a riot or some kind of a protest, some road or the other blocked off, and there is nothing you can do about it now.
Arvind Raja is asking you then, Abhijit, can we get your alternative views on what will you tell if the police shot 20 to 30 people?
Sure. What you would have gotten was that you would have gotten Rana Ayub writing her normal column in the Washington Post saying end of democracy, fascism on the rise and all of that. But the rest of India would have cheered you. The non-English speaking India would have cheered you.
Yeah.
The problem is you didn't do that. You are so worried about the New York Times and the Washington Post that seems to be your only barometer of policy making in this country.
Yeah. Next point, 1 second.
Karthik Sharma, will Pandit Abhijit Lal ever fight elections? तुमको पता है अगर मेरे को एक वोट भी नहीं मिलेगा बॉस. See, I'm not that kind of person. जब मम्मी आते हैं बच्चों के साथ, ये लो भाई साहब मेरे बच्चे को ये करो, इस तरफ से अरे कितना स्वीट बच्चा है, चुन्नू मुन्नू बच्चा, चुची पुची पू लाडी डाडी डा. I'm the kind of person who'll say, what an ugly kid, man. You should have had an abortion instead. ऐसे आदमी कोई वोट डालेगा क्या? मेरा मुंह देखा है, मैं क्या बोलता हूँ देखा है तुमने? मेरे को तो अगर 5 वोट मिल गए कोई इसमें, the last election I won was class monitor elections back in school. ठीक है? And one election for cultural secretary also in school. उसके बाद I haven't attempted elections. I'm not running for a popularity contest. Thank you very much. Popularity contests are for Miss World contestants. I don't do that. Thank you.
But Abhijit, you are a very good looking person.
मैं काफी बकवास बकता ही रहता हूँ ना, तो ठीक है. तो I can't do this. To be in politics, you have to have a great amount of patience and tolerance for stupidity. Somebody will come and say, सर आसमान, मैंने भवानी से बात किया है और उन्होंने बोला कि कल आसमान गिरेगा, and if you want that fellow's votes and the votes of his 10 family members, you have to say, अच्छा हाँ मैं भवानी की पूजा करता हूँ ताकि वो ना गिरे, and so on and so forth. I'll be like, चल फुट यहाँ से. So I can't.
You can't say that.
Yeah, I can't get the votes, boss. Sorry.
Okay. Rahul Malik is saying, sir, wouldn't these protests ruin the image of India and the confidence of foreign investors?
वो तो तुम्हारा ruin हो चुका है बॉस. तुम मेरे को बोलो पिछले 10 साल में कौन सा big ticket investment आया है हिंदुस्तान के अंदर? Then you remember the Suzuki boss was burnt alive in his office or something like that. That the Westron factory riot that happened 3-4 weeks back. Things like that. There was never any investor confidence in this country. Most of what is being passed off as FDI is basically recycling money that's coming through the Mauritius hawala, well, money laundering channels and things like that. And it's continuation money that existing companies are putting in money to continue running their existing operations. You haven't seen any large scale investments. Tell me one big ticket investment in the last 10 years. Just one. Kuch nahi hua hai. So you're not actually seeing any of that happening right now, boss. There is no
Sonal is
investor
asking.
confidence.
Yeah.
Has SC put a wrong precedent by staying this law now, and what is the way ahead? The SC has put a lot of wrong precedents. The first wrong precedent came when Shaheen Bagh, they took 3 months to decide if it was legal or illegal.
Yeah.
Somebody is coming, disrupting the lives of citizens, occupying a public space, and it takes you 3 months to decide that. Who's going to take you seriously?
Yeah.
And then you pass a judgment against it only after it has broken up.
Yeah.
So this is like Mexico joining the Second World War. I think Mexico joined the Second World War 5 days before it ended.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember Mexico playing a big role in the Second World War? No. Has anybody heard of Mexico's role in the Second World War? No. It's like that. So they had set that precedent then and there. These precedent they've set in legislative terms. We haven't seen the effects of that right now, but mark my words, what happened with the suspension of the farm laws, it is going to hang like a noose around our heads. The consequences of this in the future are terrifying.
But then what are the suggestions that you would give, Abhijit? See, now you sound like a very sarcastic person who doesn't like the Modi government. So tell us, what are your, see, you are a professor. What are the solutions for this kind of, making this, this not happen again?
I can give you solutions. The question is, do you have the political will to carry it through?
Yeah.
Solution number one is you say that the basic structure argument that the Supreme Court passed in 1970, I forget when, is infructuous and void because the basic structure judgment itself violates the basic structure of the Constitution. Therefore, you will not accept judicial recommendations for judicial promotions. You will not accept judicial recommendations for who should be made a judge. That is pure legislative priority. You have to pass a motion in Parliament completely overriding the judgment of what happened with the Farm Bill legislation and announce its enforcement right now. Okay, right now you reject the committee that the Supreme Court has set up. Say it is completely ultra vires to the Constitution. There is the Supreme Court can only stop a legislation if it has violated A, due process, and B, violated the some form of the basic structure of the Constitution. In this case, none of those arguments were made. The argument was hurt feelings. Okay, and God save us if hurt feelings is a category for cancelling legislation. So the starting steps are these two things that you need to do right now.
Okay. Angasundari DD says, Delhi people voted up who supported Kisans. They deserve it.
AAP has played a very naughty game. Idhar bhi, udhar bhi. Ek pair idhar, ek pair udhar. So they, I don't know if they deserve it, boss, because how much of the vote percentage did they get? What about the remaining 35-45% who didn't vote for AAP? Do they also deserve it? No. So the people never deserve this. But anyway, I mean, that's your opinion, and you're entitled to it.
Yeah. Do you think the government allowed the farmers to enter Delhi to fix themselves up in a trap?
बॉस ये देखो, ये इनकॉम्पिटेंस को 10-dimensional chess बोलना ना, ये चलता नहीं है. एक बार is fine. When it keeps happening over and over again, people were saying ये शाहीन बाग भी 10-dimensional chess है. People will get tired of it and they'll vote overwhelmingly against the BJP. You saw what happened with the Delhi elections. Na? They voted overwhelmingly for AAP. So this isn't, incompetence is not 10-dimensional chess. ये तो
Rahul
पूछा
Malik
गया.
says, Rahul Malik says, sir, wouldn't these protesters
We've asked
ruin the
this
image of India?
We've already done this question.
Done that, yeah. Is there a possibility Rajdeep will also be punished?
Punished for what? He said, I spoke to somebody who said उसे गोली मारा गया था. And then when it was pointed out, he apologized and corrected himself. So punished for what?
But it's because Abhijit, he's been doing it so many times. It's not like once. He's been doing it so many times, and he waits for a time when he is correct. Like he just luckily, if he gets, he is right, then.
So first of all, there is no fake news laws in this country. Number one. Number two, incitement requires a specific threat against a specific target. Now, Sharjeel Imam made a specific threat against a specific target. Where has Rajdeep made a specific threat against a specific target? You can't just throw him in jail because you don't like what he said or he peddled fake news at some point.
Yeah.
Right. Or come up with fake news laws.
Yeah, that's more important. What do you think this will be the impact on Khalistan movement abroad, say in Canada or Italy?
Okay. So with this, in Canada, there will be absolute zero impact because can we just take it back to the previous question, the Canada or Italy question, because otherwise I lose my train. Till we finish, if you can just keep that on screen, please.
Yeah.
In Canada, zero impact. In both these countries, zero impact, but for different reasons, and I'll tell you why. In Canada, because of the incompetence of our High Commission out there for a very long time now, Ajay Bisaria is in charge. He knows his stuff. He will change things. But prior to this, we've been warning the government about radicalization happening there. The moderate candidates during the Labour primaries, the moderate candidates amongst the Sikhs were literally beaten up by the Khalistanis and kicked out of those contests. And the police did nothing. Nobody did anything out there. The Indian High Commission also did damn all out there to help anyone. You can't help actively, you can help passively. They did not. Okay? They are more interested in schmoozing around with famous actors and hosting parties and things like that. They never actually do anything that's relevant to India out there. So we have basically allowed a full-on Khalistani capture of Labour. We have allowed a full-on Khalistani capture of the NDP. And Stephen Harper, who tried to sort of push back, because the Kanishka bombing, which was done by Khalistanis, the investigation was deliberately scuttled by the Canadian government by elements. That is how powerful they are in Canada. And Stephen Harper tried pushing back on that. Sadly, he's lost the election, so there's nothing we can do about it anymore. But our hope lies in getting the Conservatives back to power and seeing to it that they do something out there. And even there, if you don't support your own people, Ujjwal Dosanjh, who was the premier of one of British Columbia, I think, I forget where, he got beaten up. Imagine a chief minister getting beaten up by Khalistanis, boss. That is what happened to him out there. That is how strong they are. So Canada mein kuch nahi ho sakta. Italy has been hand in glove with Pakistan for a very, very long time. Okay, we never buy any defense equipment from Italy, but Pakistan does. All its JF-17 avionics are bought from Italy. They have a very old defense relationship with Italy. The Italian and Pakistani Navy have a very old cooperation agreement. They have a very good intelligence sharing agreement. There is a huge Sikh community there. All the Italian mozzarella and parmesan that you eat is run by Punjabi businessmen who are forced to conform. because we haven't set up a support mechanism for them. The moment you land up there, if you enter the mozzarella or parmesan business, you have to then go pay obeisance to the Khalistan lobby out there, which now controls things. Most of the funding for the 26/11 attack was down out of Naples. I don't think people know this.
Very
My friend
interesting.
Francesca
Nobody, yeah,
Marino,
hardly anybody knows this.
yeah, Francesca Marino has written she has been covering Khalistani funding in Italy for a long time. And now Khalistani and ISI funding has almost fused in that sense. That is why they were allowed to open up that Gurdwara across the border. It was payment for services rendered by Khalistanis in Canada and Pakistan. पहले क्या होता था कि ISI used to say हम आपको पैसे देंगे, आप जाके मरो. Now the Khalistanis, now to Pakistan is Kangal and Khalistanis are very rich. So these days what the Khalistanis do is they say हम आपको पैसा देंगे, आप जाके मरो. ठीक है? So this is happening both in Canada and in UK and in Italy. And the way we have treated, we have completely disassociated from our own Sikh emigres. We've basically fed them to the wolves. They are so terrified that if they don't conform to what the Khalistanis say, they will be hounded. They will be, and I have a personal experience for this. You know, when I lived in Melbourne, for example, when I was moving into my new flat, I moved south to Melbourne from Port Douglas. And when I was leaving, they saw Iyer in the name. So they're like, oh, you're Tamil. Yeah. Please don't put it out anywhere. Don't have yourself listed. And then they started talking to me in Tamil. Now, their last name was Shivdasani. I'm thinking, how the hell is a Shivdasani who's a Sindhi speaking to me in Tamil? Like, we had to change our name publicly, at least, in not in documents and things, but like this, because the moment they found out that we were Tamil, all the LTT bodies started coming and extorting us. And they found out where our parents were in Madras. They were from Coimbatore, and they promised to threaten our families out there and all of that.
My God.
This is the kind of networks I have personally seen out there. So, you know, while I was in Melbourne, I had to remove Iyer from the name because there were a lot of Tamils in, well, not in my neighborhood, but in neighborhoods about 5-6 stops away, where if you were Tamil, you just had to pay hafta to the Tamil cause, to the Tamil liberation cause in Sri Lanka and whatever. And God help you if you did not. I know what it's like. I've been through that. Okay, I've been through that. So there is, I know what these poor people are going through. They're living in a situation where they come back to India, they'll get arrested. If they stay there, they're thrown to the wolves anyway. And we've done nothing to help them. We've got nobody but ourselves to blame.
Neon Gladiator says, many businessmen hailed the government for these farm reforms. The government showing their cowardice now, won't it reduce the confidence in business circles for this government?
बॉस देखो इस गवर्नमेंट का क्या था, बस पब्लिक में एक पब्लिक कॉन्फिडेंस है, प्राइवेट में कोई कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं है. Its policies have been so forward, backward. I'm yet to hear a businessman praise this government in private. I know a lot of them praise it in public. In private, the tune changes completely. So it wasn't just this. There've been a whole set of things that have happened that haven't really inspired much confidence in the business community. So, you know, that's that.
Saumil Agarwal, who would have been answerable if terrorists carrying bombs would have entered along with these guys and wreaked even more chaos yesterday?
Look, this is like, this is an asked and answered question. Let's not exaggerate and get into counterfactuals of what would have happened. Yes, we have, but we've not become a laughing stock, boss. We've been a laughing stock for a very long time. So, but just to get back to the solution, because people are more interested in solutions to questions on business confidence, let's go back to that for a minute.
Yeah.
See, you have 3 layers of policy. The first order effect of policy, the second order effect of policy, and the third order effect of policy. The first order effect is the jhatka. Think of it in terms of how you sacrifice, जैसे बकरे का हलाल होता है. The first order policy is when you deliver the slit through the throat. Okay, you know तुमको मटन मिलने वाला है. There is a process to it. What happens is you have to allow, in the West, they wait for the rigor mortis to finish, which takes about 48 hours, and then they hang it up for about 2 weeks for the enzymes to act on the meat, and then it is sold. In India, because it's so hot, in 48 hours, it will be rotten. So you start butchering the animal even before rigor mortis sets in. Now, the butchery is the second order of policy. The third order of policy is आप distribution कैसे करने वाले हो, कहाँ पे करने वाले हो. अगर आपने दिल्ली में बकरे को मारा है, you can't send it off to Madras because it would have if you want to send it to Madras, you have the trucks to send it to Madras, refrigerated trucks or plane transport to send it to Madras. Otherwise, you have to sell it in Delhi. That is the third order of policy. The problem, not just with this government, but with all Indian governments, is they only think of the first order of policy. मटन खाना है तो बकरे को मारना है. बकरे को कैसे बुचर करोगे, उसे कैसे स्टोर करके ट्रांसपोर्ट करोगे, ये सब कोई सोचता नहीं है. And this is what we see, and it is not just the BJP. Let's be clear about this. This has been the problem with Indian policy making for a very, very long time. So you need to start thinking of deep policy. It has to be institutionalized. पहले ये होगा, उसके बाद क्या होगा. This is why every policy compulsorily, to date, for example, with demonetization, we didn't know what the government goals were and which of those goals were met. You have to insist that all policies are accompanied by a short white paper on what the first intended 1-year effects are, 5-year effects are, and 15-year effects are. What are the failure standards? What are the measurement standards? Unless you impose that as a kind of discipline on the government, you're going to continue to get trashy laws. Now, the farm laws are actually very good laws. They haven't put much thought into it. That's a different matter, but they're actually very good laws when you look at the downstream results that come about from it. But even there is no courage of the conviction to defend it. So क्या करोगे आप? You actually cede legislative power to the Supreme Court. Congratulations. Best of luck.
If the Khalistanis can come back, then even Tata should also be brought back.
They're all rhetorical points. Let's not get here.
Is Modi trying to be more of a global leader? Is he following the path of 19?
I don't know Mr. Modi, so I really can't tell you what he's thinking or what he's not thinking. All I can tell you is this government is bungling policy very, very badly.
Do you share the same fear as many of us do that these kind of instances may happen again and the scale may increase in the coming years? Yeah.
Prepare for the next 4 years to be an absolute nightmare. You're going to see हर 2 महीने कोई ना कोई ऐसे दंगा फसाद होने वाला है.
Sir, I read somewhere that China is resurrecting the Khalistan insurgency, and with Sikh soldiers deployed at the LAC, do you suspect a Chinese hand?
Yeah, not conspiracy theory, please. The Chinese do enough this thing. You know, they keep manipulating all kinds of information and data. They do manipulate international business. So at some level, yes, but at this micro level, no.
Yeah. Do you think a republic rule like China will be beneficial for India?
See, Pakistan has had dictatorships. Ethiopia has had dictatorships. Somalia has had dictatorships. Has it changed anything for the better? No, no. The problem with a dictatorship is, who's your dictator going to be? You can either have a very good dictator or you can have a very bad dictator. The classic example has always been Portugal and Spain. Spain had a fantastic dictator. He took it from Europe's poorest country and made it the 10th biggest economy in the world, Francisco Franco. And Francisco Franco was almost a semi-educated army general. On the other hand, Portugal had Salazar, who was the head of department of economics at the University of Coimbra. And yet, apparently, my dog knew more economics than he did, because he reduced Portugal from penury into even more penury by the end of his rule. So, dictatorship isn't guaranteed. It can make things much better, but it can make things a lot worse.
Abhijit, do you plan to write books on the anthropological evolution of societies and its relation to state monopoly on violence as well as on foreign policy? Samved
Good.
Iyer.
I should, no? I've just had another book come out, by the way, well, a chapter in a book. It's India 2030, a Rajasic Republic by Gautam Chikarmane. So there's chapters by me, my former boss Samir Saran, Vikram Sood, all these, the former Raw Chief and all of that in there. So do buy that book and read it and let me know what you think. My chapter's on defense reforms, but this is a very good idea. Hang on, hold this. I'm going to take a quick screenshot of this because this is a good book idea. Okay. Even if not a book, then definitely an academic paper on it. Yes.
The only one guy who deserved to be a dictator in India was Subhash Chandra Bose. That it's no other than him would have it to end dictatorship himself.
You do know Subhash Chandra Bose was had very, very leftist communist views, right? So yeah, I don't think the economy would have really done very well under him. It might have done well for a short time, but if it continued with that kind of communist rule, we would have gone the USSR way and broken up. So no, boss, no.
Preetham, do we lack strong opposition which leads to so rude in behavior of government towards policy?
Yes, I partially, Preetham. Yes, the very fact that our opposition is such a sad, pathetic joke means that the government gets away with a lot more than it should. Yes.
What are your views on Modi speaking at Davos for the Great Reset Initiative? Harsh Mehta.
I don't go by speeches, I go by actions. I suggest you do that as well. There's a saying that God gave human beings the power of speech so that he could hide his thoughts. And that invariably is the case. Speeches are not a substitute for action.
How successful do you think?
Rahul Gandhi is campaigning in TN. Boss, देख भाई, अगर मैं अभी even with the kind of I gave you my assessment of my electoral prospects कि मेरे को एक वोट भी नहीं मिलेगा. If I was made TN BJP head and you removed the ADMK and the DMK from the equation right now, with Rahul Gandhi campaigning TN, I would have won a supra majority. I would have won 232 seats out of 232 seats. See, I may not be able to win against Mayawati or against Mulayam Yadav or against the BJP or anyone, but against Rahul Gandhi, I can easily stand and win an election, boss. Okay, anybody can win an election against Rahul Gandhi. ठीक है, वो मेरा ग्राम पंचायत का भी मैं इलेक्शन जीत लूं फिर तो. So ये पूछने का सवाल नहीं है. This is like saying, see, it's one thing for you to ask me, भाई अभिजीत तू अगर आजकल बॉलीवुड में मसल बॉय कौन है? सलमान खान. अगर तू सलमान खान के साथ फाइट में लड़ेगा, तेरा क्या होगा कालिया? वो तो सभी को पता है, मेरा मुंह टूटा हुआ आ जाएगा. बट इफ यू आस्क मी, सर आप एक बिल्ली के साथ फाइटिंग करोगे या एक चींटी के साथ फाइटिंग करोगे, कौन जीतेगा? आई कैन टेल यू राइट नाउ. सो यू आर आस्किंग मी व्हाट काइंड ऑफ अ क्वेश्चन इज दिस? दिस इज लाइक आस्किंग मी अगर एक चींटी है आपके सामने तो ये देयर इज अ जोक अबाउट दिस, यू नो, ये दो चींटियां पेड़ पे बैठी हैं और नीचे हाथी जाता है उनके नीचे. तो एक चींटी ने दूसरी चींटी को क्या बोला? कुचाल दे साले को, कुचाल दे. यू आर आस्किंग मी अ क्वेश्चन लाइक दैट.
Okay, Sadhu was asking you, do you see any promising leader in future?
I have learned not to trust leaders. I trust systems. One of the biggest things we realize is never place your hopes on one leader. If that one leader does not have a whole system around them, that means they're fundamentally useless. People realized this when Ayatollah Khomeini came to power. Everything before that, you know, he was a kind person, he was a gentle person, he was a very caring person, so on and so forth. And when he comes to power, he turns into this absolute nasty, horrible tyrant that was far, far worse than the Shah he replaced. And we should have known that because Khomeini never built an ecosystem around him. He never showcased to the world that I'm a team player. I have several competent people around me Today, I don't see anybody like that. I see individuals. I don't see a whole system supporting those individuals. So the answer to your question is no. And I would really advise all of you, do not place your trust in individuals. Place your trust in ecosystems that open themselves to public scrutiny, that show you कि boss हमारे पास ये multi intersectional multi-dimensional expertise है. Okay, vote for a system, don't vote for an individual. No, I don't think the government will realize this. I don't think they still, even now, they don't think they've done anything wrong. Have you seen a public apology from the government so far? It's been what, 48 hours now. Have they even apologized for the shame they brought upon us yesterday? Sorry, 24 hours ho gaya. Have they even apologized? Have they even acknowledged the shame that they brought upon us yesterday? On Republic Day, for the Red Fort to be defiled, for the flag to be defiled. Kuch sharam hota, then the whole cabinet should have put their resignations in yesterday. Nahi karenge. No, they don't. They actually think they've won a great victory by delegitimizing the farmer movement.
Rahul says, Sir, RSS is a grand organization which couldn't BJP find a better leaders who are actually having some caliber rather than these clowns?
Because the RSS doesn't interfere in the BJP. They only give polite suggestions. They don't shove their opinions down the BJP's throat. The RSS believes in that separation of powers, so they will never, ever shove things down the BJP's throat. They only give suggestions. Ultimately, it's for the BJP to take its own decisions.
Do you think blockchain could play a big role in political and policy making decisions in future?
I don't see how, because blockchain is pure. I really don't see how it's going to affect political and policy making decisions, because blockchain is a security link where you break one link, then you can't enter the other. But I'm very curious. Tell me how you think it's going to affect policy and policy making, because this is the first time I'm hearing about this.
So, what do to help dilute the Punjab or Tamil separatist propaganda? Does the PMO or HMO listen to Act Republic?
What to do to help? Look, the way forward is economic progress to incentivize everybody in the system. But if you're going to continue to do socialism, you're not going to be able to break that. Okay, you had neutralized Punjabi separatism for a long time. Now it's back with a vengeance, and there's nothing you can do. In the space of the last 4-5 years, you've basically given a huge fillip to the Khalistan movement. Tamil separatism is not a problem. Ever since the LTT got crushed, it's not really been a problem. Sorry, it's not really been a problem. But you might have, the occasional Tol Tirumavalan and Virudala Cheetaigal and all of that say certain things. Again, they're not relevant in terms of Tamil Nadu politics also. Does the PMO and HMO listen to Republic? No, they don't. They listen to Vion. They think Vion is one of the mouthpieces of the government. And that's it.
Okay, Twitter's role in these riots was very sinister. Where is your petition standing now?
My petition was against Facebook, not against Twitter. Yes, it was sinister, but then, Twitter and Facebook get daily access to the PMO, daily access to the HMO, daily access to whatever part of government that they want. They're so intertwined with the government, the government seems to feel that attacking Twitter or Facebook is like attacking their own. So they're not going to do anything. You've seen how completely useless the parliamentary committee has also been in terms of tackling these people. Na? Kuch nahi hoga, boss. Kuch nahi hoga. They're so deep in government, kuch nahi hoga.
Abhijit, I note that you possess copious knowledge spanning multiple disciplines. Could you elucidate on how you were able to do so? I find the perspective you offer extremely rare. Samved Iyer.
Actually, it was beaten into me. Unless you want to get beaten left, right, and center, don't get into it much. Lots of people, right? So first was my father. There, my father was a communist. My mom has always been hardcore right wing. So घर में पूरा महाभारत चलते रहता था 24/7. उसमें different points of view मिलते थे. Then there were my school teachers who went on giving me because they were so every time I was abroad I used to be top of my class. Every time I was in India I used to be at the bottom of my class. And when I was abroad my teachers used to give me more reading material because they'll say very good, now read this. In India they used to be like, they'd also give me more reading material because they say तुम कितनी बुद्धू बच्चे हो, कितनी उल्लू के पट्टे हो, ये लो और पढ़ो करके. So they used to give me more. So I don't think my childhood is an experience you want, boss. So yeah, avoid.
Now Chinnamama is returning. What do you think will be the
Chinnamma
fate
is
of EPS?
the fate of EPS and OPS. Look, I think they're ensconced quite well. Knowing the ADMK really well and the cadre of the ADMK, I think Chinnamma has lost what the levers of power she would have been able to manipulate immediately after Jayalalitha's death. So I don't see much happening. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I wish her nothing but well. I owe her a lot. So yeah.
Rex Bailey, go into government offices yourself. They'll teach you real knowledge. That's what Abhijit also did.
Okay.
Sorry.
Why is the government not
government?
focusing on economic growth? I don't know. Ask them. I honestly don't know. They keep coming up with more and more complex rules and things. One of the first things I was always taught is that complexity is the surest way of killing off reforms. They don't seem to have understood that. So they keep falling for this bureaucratic trick of making unnecessarily complex decisions, multi-layered decisions and things like that. It doesn't work, but they think they're doing a good job. You actually go and look at if there was something called a self-assessment form, you'd actually find the BJP give itself 25 out of 10 for every answer you ask them. Are you doing well? Yes, we're 25 on 10. Is the economy growing? Yes, 25%. ये IMF तो झूठ बोल रही है, 11.5% नहीं grow करने वाले, 25% grow करने वाले. They actually believe that, by the way.
What do you think Biden's foreign policy would be now? Will they appease Iran and throw Israel under the bus?
Look, they're definitely planning to screw Netanyahu over somehow or the other. And yes, they will reinstate the Iran deal. The thing is, because they've created a very strong alliance between Israel, UAE, and the Saudis, between the UAE's finesse, Israel's diplomatic abilities in DC, and Saudi money, they will slow down Biden. But yes, ultimately, I think Biden will try to appease Iran. And yes, they will try to throw Israel under the bus. The question is, how far will they go and how much will they succeed? I still have more faith in Saudi, Iranian, and UAE abilities than I do in American.
Preetham is asking, please, Abhijit, once more explain.
That's going to require a whole podcast. Can't do that now.
Yeah. Yes. Why is center-right arguments so disjointed, uncoordinated compared to the left? They work and support much better.
That's because the center-right doesn't create an ecosystem. The only ecosystem you have that's almost 70 years old is the left ecosystem. They're ingrained in every part of government. And because this government wants so desperately the validation of that left ecosystem, they don't even want to create an ecosystem. Because, like Groucho Marx used to say, I don't want to be the member of a club that will have me as its member. So, जो भी इस government को validation देता है, they're like, चल put, तेरा तू कौन है बहनचोद validation, whatever validation देने के लिए. And they will go over to जो उनके मुंह पे थूकता है ना, उसी का validation वो seek करते हैं. तो इसीलिए they have that normative power. They decide what is fake news, what is not fake news. They decide what is right. I know people on the extreme left who consider themselves right wing, and you will actually have academic conferences where this communist will be called as a right wing representative. And and the left-wing guy would be an ultra Pol Potist, Khmer Rouge style Pol Potist, and they will pass that off as the diversity of Indian opinion. It's like 50 shades of far left masquerading as left, right and center. वो प्रोग्राम भी हुआ क्या करता था ना निधि का, सॉरी मैडम एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर ऑफ हार्वर्ड निधि राजदान का, लेफ्ट राइट एंड सेंटर, और उसमें क्या होता था तो तुमने देखा होता था, उसमें 5 लोग होते थे, one would be Congressy, one would be BJP. They would choose the stupidest bakra from the BJP to come talk so that he can't make an argument. And the remaining so-called 3 centrists would all be Congress stooges masquerading around as centrists, or they'd be communists. So you would have 40 minutes given to the left, masquerading as the center and the left. Also, the center right would also be a communist. And the right would be represented by one baboon, inarticulate baboon from the BJP, who they'd claim was right. So in the end, they would get 40 minutes. You would, if you were lucky, you'd get 10 minutes, because of those 10 minutes, most of it would be spent by this baboon saying, my good friend, I love you so much, bhaichara, peace, vasudhaiva kutumbakam, nonsense like that.
Well, incidentally, what was this thing that Nidhi went to USA for?
I don't know, boss. I don't know, and I don't care. I personally think she would have been a great fit for Harvard. She deserves Harvard, and Harvard deserves her.
Okay. 27th May. Do you think the government should have come with reforms as a normal law rather than an ordinance? Because they gave a higher ground to the opposition, despite the fact they all...
This was a normal law. This was passed as a normal law. How is this an ordinance? I don't know. Was it passed as an ordinance? I thought it was passed normally like any normal law.
Harsh Mehta, what do you make of military-to-military level dialogue of US and Pakistani army? Or what's the agenda?
I don't know right now. Let's see. We need to see where it goes, and I don't know right now. But I suspect most of it will have to do with Afghanistan.
Is there a psychological reason behind the socialist disposition of Indians? Even Modi, as you note, was scared by Rahul Gandhi's suit boot ki sarkar jibe and went back on his big reforms.
Poverty and a loss of confidence. You know, Churchill used to say that socialism is the politics of failure. I think we're so ingrained to 700 to 1,200 years of failure, of constant failure, economic failure, military failure, social failure, everything, that we've turned, psychologically, the whole nation has turned socialist because we're just scared. We have no self-confidence. We have no confidence to compete. Even the people we send abroad, Pichai didn't start off Google. Pichai was just a chaprasi at Google, and then he was a manager. He didn't initiate Google. Indra Nooyi didn't start up Pepsi. Okay, we're fantastic at providing chaprasi turned managers. We are not great at starting up ourselves out there. So this is a problem. Ye jo inferiority complex hai na hamara, it's very corrosive. To give you a very, very simple example, think of it this way, and this is an example that all of you will understand. For the last 3,000 years, everything that was great and good about India came out of Bihar. Bihar was the beating heart of Indian civilization. Be it the Buddha, be it the Mauryas, be it the Guptas, be it Kalidasa, everything came out of Bihar. Okay. Till 1857, where Bihar was the root, because it was the most nationalist of all the states, because to be an Indian was to be a Bihari. Okay. To be an Indian was to be completely in tune with the culture of Bihar. And so they attacked that very culture of Bihar, destroyed it after 1857. And 3,000 years of wealth and culture was destroyed in the space of 20 to 30 years. It went from being India's richest state to India's poorest state, and the loss of culture was so great that today Bihar is seen as a criminal state. There are all the negative connotations about Bihar, right? And that is what is so sad. It takes thousands of years to build up a culture. It takes 10, 15 years to destroy a culture. And that is what we have seen. And 700 years of constant failure and oppression you create a nation of failures. You create a psychosis of failure. And failures naturally gravitate towards socialism.
In my family, a WhatsApp group war ongoing since yesterday on farmer protest. People are leaving WhatsApp group. Are there any merits in the farmers' protest?
No, zero, zilch. There's lots of merits if you run a bhandar, one of those, what do you call it? Those exchanges where they come in,
Yeah.
where you're mandated to do the goods transfers, because that's where you make most of the money.
Yeah.
There's merit in
Where
it if you're a politician in Punjab, because that agricultural, the skimming off the funds of those bhandars is where most of the political money is made, because Punjab isn't an industrialized state at all. So it's basically that skimming off of the money that contributes to political funding in Punjab. So other than that, unless you're a politician or a bhandar owner, there's really no argument for it.
Where does this government stand as far as India-China's standoff is concerned?
That's such a broad question. I suspect it stands with India. It could stand with China as well. I don't know.
A lot of Indian military literature is retired, generals settling scores and griping about issues they could have solved long ago. Do you agree? And do we lack a culture of military writing?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It's not a culture of military writing. It's a lack of culture of accountability and introspection. Very few people were able to do it. Gurmeet Kanwal was one of the people that was able to do it. Brigadier Gurmeet Kanwal. General Sundarji was one of the people who was able to do it. Admiral Raja Menon is one of those people who's still able to do it. But see, it's going. Admiral Raja Menon is very old right now. Admiral Varghese Koithara does not, he avoids the think tank circuit like a plague. I don't know anybody who's actually met him in real life. And you wouldn't have ever heard of Admiral Varghese Koithara, in fact, in spite of the fact that he's possibly one of the most brilliant nuclear strategists we've ever had. Admiral Raja Menon used to keep coming on TV. Now he no longer comes. He's very old. Brigadier Kanwal passed away last year. He's the father of Rahul Kanwal, the India Today, and Gurmeet sir was my mentor. So we miss him very deeply, but he was somebody who could write amazingly well. And he used to think, and you could criticize him. You could say, sir, ye aapne galat bola hai. And he won't be like, साले जानता है मैं कौन हूँ, मैं ब्रिगेडियर हूँ, तू कौन है गंजे मोटे. No, he'd always said, sit down, tell me what you mean. And then we'd have roaring arguments, we'd scream at each other, and then we would always agree in the end ki ye hai karke. Military writing requires a lot of introspection. Unless you introspect, you can never do it properly. And we do have them. Admiral Arun Prakash, again, notice the number of Navy folks writing brilliant stuff is disproportionately larger than the number of Army or Air Force people writing about it, which tells you a lot, but you draw your own conclusions from there.
Yeah. So has Major Gaurav Arya's views helped dispel misunderstandings in India about the strength of armed forces?
Yes, they have. They have. Because, he brings in a very unique point of view. He's a realist. And he's a very good tactician. For me, though, I'm always looking at strategists, not tacticians. There's a different genre of writing tactically, and there's a different genre of writing strategically. I don't really get into the tactics unless it's specifically Air Force. I don't really get into naval tactics or army tactics, and Major Gaurav Arya is very, very good at army tactics and things like that. So, but remember, all of these people fit into different slots as well.
Abhijit, we'll just end with a last point on what Arnab is undergoing right at the moment. He said that he's going to, make all his accounts open to public. What do you think is the decision? Yeah, he has. So what do you think is the reason for this? Did he anticipate some sort of problems like they would accuse him of money laundering and things like that?
sorry, do we, yeah. He is going through the classic thing that all supporters of this government go through. There is an ecosystem against them, but the government doesn't feel it needs to protect the people who protect it. आप अगर गवर्नमेंट को प्रोटेक्ट करो, ये आपकी मेहरबानी है, एंड अगर आप गवर्नमेंट में थूक मारो, वी विल कम एंड क्रॉल left, right, and center just to get your approval. Like I said, this government doesn't care for people who give it its approval. The government only cares for the approval of people who don't respect it. That said, Arnab is learning that lesson the hard way. Okay, they provided him with no support. Now the poor man is hiding out in Noida because thankfully Yogi has at least provided him with support. So yeah, he's a dear friend. What more do you want me to say?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Abhijit, answering all those questions and giving us so much of your time. We'll meet again in another session. Thank you.
Well, very well.
Thank you.